back to the show, Business Mastery for Startups, Scale-Ups, and Early Stage Businesses with your host, Jerry Gadori. That's me. And in this week, we have esteemed guest Todd Westra, multiple-time founder, multiple-time exiter, and as important or more important for us today, small business and startup advisor and general enthusiast, someone who can help give you the answers you need to grow. Todd, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
That is a beautiful, beautiful intro. Thank you so much. I am definitely not of the normal cloth. I come from a different part of the cloth than most people. I was the eighth of 9 kids, Jerry. And as the eighth of 9 kids, my parents really didn't have a lot of budget for cool things for Todd. And so as a kid, I learned at 8 years old that everything I know now about business, I learned on my paper route. And my brother was 11. I was 8. He's like, Todd, I want some money. And I said, so do I. And so we picked up a paper route. We had to sell to our neighbors. We had a supplier that would deliver us raw goods. We had to insert advertisements. We did the fulfillment and delivery. We would invoice. We would go collect money from our clients. And then I paid an invoice at the end of the month. And I'm sitting here going, years later thinking, what else is there to business? I mean, you take a good and service, you better it a little bit, you deliver it, and then you collect money, and hopefully there's enough room in there to make a profit.
Yep, exactly. Hopefully the invoices exceed the expenses.
And hopefully all invoices get paid.
Yes. That was one of the harder lessons I learned early in my business career, that an invoice isn't money.
No doubt about it. No, I look back on some of the people that I would always have a hard time collecting from, and I think, what a jerk. It was $7.50 for a month of my labor to deliver them the paper, and they wouldn't even pay me. So, I still get jerks like that today. But, ever since that time, I've only held a couple of jobs, and one of them was at the golf course to get my free golf. And one of them was an internship with an awesome motivational speaking group, the Covey Group. And outside of that, I have really found life to be very interesting in that I could find a hobby or something that I love to do and create a business that would generate enough revenue to support my family in. So I've been in the golf business. I've been in the audio video industry, building home theaters and home automation systems and all that cool stuff. And then all the way around the loop, I found it super intriguing to want to work in Asia and some kind of international thing. And so I started a BPO in the Philippines in 2008. And, all those things kind of led me to paths where, hey, this is something I'm interested in. I'm going to try and create a revenue path in that thing. And it's universally possible, in my opinion.
I agree. And you said a ton there that I want to unpack. So bear with me for a minute. One quick comment. Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is by far still my favorite business book of all time. And
it's amazing.
Every child in my family gets it as a gift when they graduate high school.
You're so good. I you know what I do? I do How to Win Friends and Influence People. I make my kids read that as sophomore, junior year in high school. They've got to read it so that they can learn before they leave high school that teachers aren't so bad. They just got to treat them the right way, and things work out better for them.
I will say this for Dale Carnegie. That's a great book. It's up in that pile somewhere. But I will say this for sure is a big advantage. That's a heck of a lot more fun read than Dr. Covey's book. Because the one thing I warn people about with 7 Habits is it is a dry read.
It's a dry read. Solid principles, dry read.
I literally base my entire career on it. I reread that book annually and have for 30 years. I think in terms of beginning with the end in mind. I can't stress enough. But we could spend 30 minutes talking about that. And if you let me, I'll happily do it. So let me switch gears.
Let's not.
Yeah, you said, it'd make for a dry show. So switching gears to something you said that's important, and it reminds me. So I'm friends with a gentleman named Kevin Jervich, former NFL player, became a tech founder. He was actually on the show a few weeks back. And he recently wrote a post on LinkedIn talking about some of the biggest founders and startups in recent history and how none of the founders had experience in the industry they wound up dominating. Elon Musk
Interesting.
wasn't a car guy before he started Tesla, wasn't in aerospace before SpaceX, wasn't a social media guy before Twitter. Maybe not the best example to end with, but point being, but point being in mentioning it and guys like him
Yeah.
is they found
Yeah.
something and they were interested in and they learned along the way. And you just
Love
talked
it.
about that.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
it-
you know, it's so funny, Jerry. I'll never forget my idol growing up was always Jack Nicklaus. And I remember I started this home putting green, the backyard putting green business in 1997. And literally 1998, the summer of 1998, I was sponsoring a golf tournament, and who shows up and who comes and putts on my demo green? Jack Nicklaus. And
wow.
I was like, you know, I never would have thought that because I love golf, never had the raw talent to become a pro. And so here I was walking amidst him, and Greg Norman was there, and there was a bunch of other guys that I loved. And I just thought, this is the coolest thing, that I can create a business generating revenue for me and my family, and like walk amongst the people that I thought were the coolest people in the world. And I've heard Elon Musk talk about that. I've heard like all these people talk about, look, I'm a consumer of this thing. Now I'm a vendor of this thing. And I didn't know I could do that, but I did it.
That's amazing. So, very quick golf story. I have survived a lifetime of business to business sales without developing a golf addiction. I only went golfing one time. It was year before last. It was an AFCEA golf event.
Jerry.
I got put in a group with three other serious golfers. So when I, or two others, three other serious golfers. And when I went to the group, I said, look, guys, I'm not going to screw around. I'll do the best I can, but I've never golfed in my life. If you're serious about this, I'll bow out now. I don't want to ruin your game. And you could see there was a little part of their mind where like, maybe it'd be better if you did. But they're gracious and great. And I've got to show you this. The colonel who was leading that team gave me this challenge coin for doing such a great job during it was a really positive experience.
I love it. Yeah. Golf is a very easy sport to build camaraderie and friendship. Even when you're competing against each other. I found oftentimes I walk away becoming buddies with the person that I beat or lost to. In the throes of competition, sometimes friendships occur.
Agree. And that goes for business as well. It's interesting. I started my career in the technology services space, specifically in technology staffing. And the person who taught me perm staffing, still in the same area, has been doing it for 30-something years. He and I, even though my company isn't a staffing firm, we do some staffing adjacent things. So he's technically a competitor. We go out to lunch every month. It doesn't matter.
I love it. Well, that's the thing, and I feel like, starting and launching a business and then that's an exciting thing. Like the start and the launch, there are a few things more exciting, more stressful, more rewarding than launching a new business. And the part where I feel like most people get stuck is post-launch. How do I transition into actually a growing, scaling business? And I'll never forget with my audio video company, I had a partner, and we were so excited, and we started bidding on really big jobs, and we started getting them, and we were like, dude, we don't even know how we're going to do this thing. And so that was exciting, and it was fun, and we figured things out. But I remember thinking, dude, we need to hire someone to help us with this and this and this and this. And we had a list of like 10 things. Another book, by the way, that's absolutely incredible is oh my gosh, I just brain farted. That's too bad. Anyway, I'll remember in a second. But you got to build the org chart as you're growing your business. And as you start your business, build the org chart. And as you grow your business, reference the org chart. Figure out, what kind of people do I need? In that business, I needed installers. I needed guys to pull wire. I needed programmers and coders. I needed people that could buy the hardware and equipment. I needed engineers to design it. And my partner and I mapped this whole thing out. And when we mapped it out, we were 22, 23 years old, and we were going, this is really cool. The E-Myth, that's the book. The E-Myth, Michael Gerber, fantastic.
Yep.
That's one of my every other year reads. But
I
but as
read E-Myth Revisited. Is that
the same thing.
Same book, right? Yeah. Okay, that's what
same book. Yeah. But as you build the org chart and as you start plugging people into the areas you're not that great at, all of a sudden growth starts to happen. And I've learned over the years that there's so many little things like that: building the org chart, understanding financials, building pro formas, learning what your competition is doing. To your point, going to lunch with your competition is a great idea. For one thing, there's a blue ocean. I'm a blue ocean guy. There's a lot of work out there for all of us to share in. And yet sometimes your competitor will say something and you can ask them, hey, how are you dealing with this thing going on right now? And guess what? They'll tell you how they're dealing with it. And you're like, oh, I'd never even thought of dealing with it that way. And those kind of conversations, Jerry, work with me here, can be the most effective conversations you can ever have by not fearing your competition, but appreciating them, respecting them, and actually talking to them. Is not collusion, it's coolness.
Iron sharpens iron. Everyone should be blessed with great competitors, because not only do quality competitors make you better at your game, but to your point, you can get together and it's nothing gross like price setting or anything like that. It's just understanding the dynamics of the marketplace and how you can better serve your clients. I'm going to slightly disagree with one thing you said though.
Yeah.
E-Myth Revisited is great, but if you're looking for a book about growing your company, I know a guy. That's a good one. In all seriousness, though, E-Myth Revisited is another classic. That's a classic for a reason.
Yep. The thing that you learn in school is that, grow up, learn this thing, get a job. And what they never teach you, and nobody ever teaches you, are the things that they don't really understand themselves, which are building an organization takes a lot of work. And sometimes you've got to be this person, this person, this person, and this person all at the same time, which is impossible. And so what you have to do is recognize the things that you can actually do well. And there's things you just need to go find someone way better than you to do those things. And then you start learning that, hey, even the things that I could do well, someone else can do better. And so that's important to me in growth.
Yeah, this is turning into a book recommendation episode.
Good.
But there's a great book that came out not too long ago called Who Not How. And
love that one.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on the author's name, but the essence of the book is what you just said. As a CEO, in the beginning, you do everything. That's the nature of being a founder. But your job is to work yourself out of the roles that you're not passionate about 100%. Or you're not exceptional in. And as soon as you possibly can, and make yourself something of an internal free agent. So you can focus your energy in two areas: where the biggest opportunity is and where the biggest risks are. And the sooner you can get there, the better your path.
100% agree. 100% agree. So Jerry, when you and we've had a couple conversations now about growth and growth journey and all this kind of stuff. It all comes down to, like, I don't know. A couple years ago, I was driving my son out to and his wife. They were moving down to Arizona, and I was kind of watching. My daughter was watching this Elon Musk movie about launching rockets, and I saw this rocket launch and explode, and a rocket launch and explode, and the third one, I think it was the third or fourth one that had it exploded, he would have been out of business, and it made it into orbit. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. And then he's landing those launchers back down on the ground, and I'm like, holy crap, mind blown. And I remember thinking, business is a lot like this rocket launch. And we talk about launching a business all the time, but this rocket, I couldn't get this image out of my mind of this rocket launching and then landing, and that the action of launch is not the same as what it launched into orbit. Like in his case, it's those Starlink satellites, right? Like launches up, deploys the satellites, comes back down, launches more, deploys them, and those do a different mission than just launch, right? And I've met business owners who are 20 years into their business still in launch mode. Like, I got to hustle, and I got to do this and be everyone and be everything. But the reality is, I kind of look at this launch stage as the first action, and then the transition from launch into actually fulfilling your mission. That to me is this transition that we've kind of alluded to of growth mindset and growth strategy. And I just feel so passionate that people need to learn this, that there is kind of this graduation event mentally, physically, and part of your psyche of your business is, okay, we got this figured out. Like, we're making money. How do we multiply this? And that is to just focus more on the mission than all the crap it took to launch. Does that make sense?
It does, and I agree. An interesting note. So we were introduced by mutual friend Joshua Monge, and Joshua is a fractional COO. And he and I got into, as heated as disagreements get here, mind you, we got into a relatively heated disagreement when I said, I think a COO and an operations mindset in a startup is a mistake. I think that early stage companies are all about hustle and figuring out what works. Once they figure out what works, they start to build the systems and processes that become what you're describing. But in the beginning, those are just frameworks. Once they define them, then they need to become more operationally mindset focused, and then they're able to achieve what you described. But in the very beginning, I think it erases the biggest advantage a startup has, which is nimbleness and speed.
I agree with you. I disagree. I agree mostly. But here's what I think needs to happen. There's this like, the very first thing you do is you start to recognize that you've got people wanting to pay you for your stuff. That's the moment where you say, let's do a systems check. And this to me is like the stage one of this transition. And there's 4 stages, but the stage one is like, let's do a systems check. Meaning, okay, how are we guiding the ship? First of all, there's a guidance system. Are we aligned on something other than let's hustle? And I think that that's a big one. So what I'm inferring is that mission vision values, like, if you haven't identified them, it's probably happening naturally. But sometimes it helps just to take a step back and say, you know what, guys, we're totally driven to serve, like you and I, we're driven to serve CEOs and helping them grow and scale their businesses. Like, we want to see growth. We get excited about that. That is kind of part of our mission, is to see what else can we do to help these guys, right? And then you kind of got to take a step back and say, all right, mission, vision, values set. What is my potential exit? Like, if I want to jump off this ship, how would I even do that at this point? And best case scenario is you get paid to leave this business. So what could that look like? Who are my possible acquirers, or who would actually want to give me money to take this business off my hands? And I would say that the vast majority of businesses never think exit strategy. They never think about that because they're launching. Like, who wants to think about the exit when you're launching? And I think that people that don't think about exit until someone says, hey, I want to buy your business, that's way too late. You can be designing, optimizing, and building for someone to acquire before you even start.
And should. So I didn't hear a disagreement in there, but I suspect if I were to infer, I think what I call a framework is what you're calling the beginning of processes. But I want to switch to what you ended with, because that's a key part. So when I first, especially smaller, earlier stage companies, when I first worked with them, I asked them just that: what's your exit strategy? And no one wants to talk about it. Now, if they're VC funded, their exit strategies are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But if they're bootstrapped, they're like, oh, I don't. And I'm like, gosh, let me ask you a question. If you were designing a plane, would you get on it at the launch and not think about how you were going to land it? It's the
Totally.
same thing. Those
Totally.
decisions impact those outcomes impact the decisions that you're looking to make. If I'm building a company
100%.
to be acquired, if I'm building a company to IPO, if I'm building a company I want to hand down to my children, if I want to be a regional player, if I want to be a local mom and pop, if I want to be international, all those things impact the decisions I make in my growth stage. So I couldn't agree more.
100%.
To quote our boy,
100%.
Dr. Covey, it's beginning with the end in mind.
Amen. It totally is. Totally is. And so once you've kind of figured out this like systems check, because like think about it in a rocket, like it's not going to detach that bottom thing until it's already used all its fuel, kind of gotten you where it needed to go, and then it's like detach, that thing falls back to the earth, and then you've got to start doing some house cleaning, right? It's like, okay, under your seatbelts, let's look around. What needs to happen so we can get ready for the next stage of our business? And I look at things like, can you understand your financial statements? Like if you were to have your CPA or bookkeeper or your wife or whoever it is doing your books at this point, print you a report of your P&L and your balance sheet, would those numbers mean anything to you? Like, and if you can't read those two financial statements, are you really ready for growth? Like, hey, I need to raise some money. Really? Do you need to? Or are you just thinking that you need to because every book tells you need to? Like, read your financials. Could you pull this off?
I'd like to jump in there for an important note. So my background is I'm a sales guy. That's I sell a thing, and I have, and you just hit it on the head. I have the very bad habit that a lot of salespeople do, which is there's no problem that I can't sell my way out of. So if I screw up my finances, I just tell myself I need to make 5 more sales this month to cover my screw up.
Right.
And I have a belief system where I believe I can do that, and I figure it out. I always do. The problem is I create problems that don't need to be there out of the laziness of not learning that skill. And funding is kind of the macro version of what I described,
Right.
So I could, but listen, before we get too far, I feel like we're covering a lot of stuff. Let me ask you this, Todd.
Yeah.
If you could give a startup founder or an early stage business leader any one piece of advice, and I kind of suspect I might know what it is based on the conversation, but what would you say that is?
One piece of advice. Let me tell you this. I've interviewed 500 plus CEOs and founders on my podcast. And I will tell you right now that the most common challenge with all 500, and this is, I think you and I even talked about this. It's always comes down to people, processes, and tools. And I think that every founder has this great passion about growing and building their own business, but they fail to recognize that they need other people. And sometimes sometimes it's cool to start with your buddies. That gets awkward really fast because it's like, I love Jerry, but Jerry's really not good at this thing that I need him to be doing. I kind of need to replace Jerry. And so the biggest piece of advice is this: think about the people, processes, and tools. You got to have the right people. You got to have a system or framework that, you described a framework. I love that you've got a little framework on the back of your, behind your head there. Like, frameworks help so much. Covey outlines a framework. And then tools. Like, don't go buy every tech stack out there to build your tech stack. Like, there's so many cool products. Nail 1 or 2 pieces of software down immediately that you're comfortable with, and just push them as long as you can until you actually can afford to hire someone to give you a better tech stack. Don't think you need to have Salesforce when there's 2 of you in your business. You got to nail something down that's easy, that's not your full-time job, but it's something that works for you and your growth and just getting things going. And that's my advice. People, process, tools. Never let those 3 things kind of jump out of your mind. That's my advice.
That's perfect. As someone who worked a lot with Salesforce and was actually a part of their partner ecosystem, and Apostaro wouldn't have become the giant that it was without them, I will say the Salesforce CRM is a fire hose when most people need a cocktail straw. It
100%.
is useless unless you unless you customize it to your needs, because it's like asking for a car and getting a car lot. It's just so much.
Totally. It's so much. And most business, I see a lot of startups. Like I mentored a lot of business incubators, and I see people getting into these big tools, and I'm like, are you sure you need to be thinking about that right now? How about revenue? How about you start seeing if customers want to pay you for what you're doing?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Excel is still the #1 database in the world, and why not recommend spreadsheets forever? There's a reason we all start there, and far too many of us leave that safety nest a little earlier than we need to. For
Agreed.
a very long time, right here on my backboard, I had a small sticky note that said overhead equals death. And that was my mentality for the first 2 years of my business. If it's a
you have to
recurring
think that way.
expense, if I don't absolutely need it, we don't get it.
100% agree. 100% agree. And speaking to startups, it's so easy to get them excited and jazzed about their own company and stuff like that. And they hear these Elon Musk stories and they hear these other things going on, and it's like, oh, that's so exciting, I want to do that. But I hear more and more recently, you and I come from a very bootstrapped mindset stage of existence. The 80s taught us that get out there and do it and go, and you can do this and blah, blah. You're watching Karate Kid, and it's like, yeah, I don't need the dojo. I just need Mr. Miyagi, right? And it's like, today, when I hear young founders, their conversations immediately turn to, I need some seed funding. And I would say this is my second biggest piece of advice is, don't immediately rush for someone to pay you to build what you think the world needs.
Yes.
Let your potential customers pay you, because if nobody's willing to pay you for that thing, they don't really want it. But if people are begging to pay you for that thing and they say you're too cheap, now all of a sudden you're like, I've got it. Now you may get seed funding, but let your customers be your seed funders. Like, let your customers and potential customers say, dude, that's a great idea. If you can pull this off, I'm totally signing up. You could say, why don't you pay me now and I'll discount you later to help me figure this out? That's a great way to seed fund.
Two important things that you bring up in that comment, Todd. One is this. Now that ZERP is over and now that it costs to borrow money again, VCs are suddenly pro bootstrap. They're suddenly profit matters. And these same guys and gals 5 years ago were like, don't worry about profit. It's all about growth. Because
let me give you some money.
Anything to borrow money. They just need to expand their funds. The second thing you mentioned that's important is, number one, if you let your customers dictate, you may find you don't need the funding at all, which is great because then you have 100% control of your company. But number two, if you do, again, as someone who, I do a fair amount with venture folks, it's a whole different conversation when you come to them and say, I have this, I need that. And you have choices than when you come with your handout saying, I have an idea and dreams.
Totally. The days of idea and dreams getting funded are gratefully at a pause. And I think that what that means for everybody out there listening to me and saying, no, I wish it wasn't that way anymore. You do. You really do. Because when you're trying to build a business and nobody wants to pay you for it, you're going to waste your time. Yeah. You get the signal down that, hey, so-and-so wants to pay me for this thing. I'm going for it. That is the signal you want. And when a funder, whether they're VC, PE, or grandma and grandpa, they will put money in when they see that other people are paying you for that thing, because they're 100% confident that somebody wants it. Maybe there's another 1,000 people just like that person that will pay you for it. That's all you need.
Exactly. And this might sound a bit mean, but friends and family is both the easiest and hardest round to raise. It's easiest because people will at least listen. They'll at least give you that much.
Right.
It's hardest because if you drop that ball, on your friends and your family, not Joey, the VC who's decamillionaire, and it's not going to hurt.
Totally. Yeah, no, it definitely, that pain though of foreseeing your family lose all the money they trusted in you, it keeps you going.
Yes.
Sometimes it beats you into depression, but it does keep you going. And if they knew going into it there was a risk, hopefully they're okay with you. Hopefully they still invite you to Thanksgiving.
And I will say this, when younger people in my family or acquaintances come in with a business idea, I always listen and I'm receptive. But then I push back and I say, 93% of all startups fail. What makes you think you can do this? Are you sure you want to? And I'm actively looking to see if that little bit of pushback discourages them. Because if it does, they have no business in the space. They're going to get steamrolled. Now, once they get through it, I absolutely support them. I'm not there to be Uncle McScrooge, don't misunderstand.
Totally.
But just to see if they've got that mettle and that preparedness for some resistance.
100%. And, Jerry, the thing that I would love to close with, because I know we're getting to time and people get to this 30-minute point and think, but one thing I really want to, the last 2 points that I really want to kind of share with your audience is this. We talked about doing a systems check. We talked about doing some house cleaning, both with your staff, your financials, and your tech stack. But I think the two most important things, the tip of the rocket, is this: understanding your ideal client avatar. Who is your best client? You start to take everybody at first, and you'll take people from this industry, that industry, and all over here. But what you need to find is your best client. Who is the client happiest to pay you for the service or product you're providing? And then leaning into that to the point that in the fourth stage of really becoming this effective thing in the orbit of your ecosystem is focusing on the three big. The three big things are your revenue operations, your marketing and messaging, and your product development. And those three things are the three things that you will never stop doing throughout the life of your business. You will never stop ideating of how to make your product better. You'll never stop trying to sell it, and you'll never stop trying to figure out, how can I explain this in the simplest way possible so that my avatar that we already defined knows how to find me and knows how to buy from me. And those two little last points are the difference makers between anyone that's stuck at $1 million, $2 million in revenue to being a $20, $30, $40 million company. And I think that's where you got to start thinking is do that systems check, make sure you understand, clean out all the garbage that you don't need anymore, and then focus on avatar and how do I message it? How do I sell it? And how do I just keep making the product better? That's how you grow and scale. That's the type of company, that's the type of founder people want to buy out of their business, because you got it figured out and it's just going.
100% yes. And a driving 1 point home that you made, in the beginning, that picture will be fuzzy. But as you continue to work, you need to bring it more and more into focus to the point that you could have a conversation with that avatar. And the better that you can do that, the better you can message, the better you can position, because you know who you're selling to.
100%.
Listen, Todd, it's clear you and I could talk until the sun goes down. So let's call it a wrap here before the two chatty Cathys steal the show. Let me ask you this. Folks who want to learn more about you and what you do, how can they get in touch with you?
Very active on LinkedIn, but growthreadiness.com. We built an assessment for founders. It's free. We built a free assessment for people to go in and take an assessment that literally takes 8 minutes or so. And at the end, you get a result showing you of the 4 stages I just described. Where are you strong? Where are you weak? Where are you really at? And each of those stages I talked about has 3 different checkpoints that really help people understand, okay, I don't understand my financials. I do understand this really well, but I don't understand that part. But I do like this. And you can see really quickly where you're weak, where you need to plug someone in to be the strength, where you just ignore those sets of problems. And so growthreadiness.com is a place to go.
Outstanding. And audience, you know this, that website will be in the show notes. So please don't crash your cars trying to write that down. In funny related news, I also do an assessment for my companies. as well. So it's
Love it.
interesting we use the same approach. But listen, here we go. It's kicking off again. I'm going to end this here. My friend Todd, thank you very much for being on the show. Love to have you
Jerry,
back.
you're the
anytime.
best. Hey, appreciate you, man. Thanks to your audience for listening in.
Thanks.